And now, ladies and gentlemen, with great pride and honor, give a rousing welcome to the Vice President of the United States, Mr. Dick Cheney.
That was Wayne LaPierre, the former CEO of the National Rifle Association, welcoming Dick Cheney to CPAC. It was February 15, 2001, one of many speeches the former vice president made over the years at the marquee conservative gathering. In the current conservative political climate, a rousing welcome for Dick Cheney might sound unfamiliar. How did CPAC leaders introduce Dick Cheney to CPAC crowds? How did the audiences react? And what were some surprises along the way? Find out in this episode of C-SPAN's podcast, The Weekly, as we remember Dick Cheney through his appearances at CPAC. Not what he said, but how he was introduced. We return to the 2001 CPAC and the rest of Wayne LaPierre's introduction with the crowd reaction.
What an honor it is for me to introduce our next speaker. His career as a public servant began in 1969 with posts in the Nixon and Ford administrations. He then went back to Wyoming to become his home state's sole congressman. He was reelected 5 times. Then, as Secretary of Defense under President George Bush, destiny forced him to direct one of the largest and most decisive military campaigns in history. It was 10 years ago, last Thursday, that he flew to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, with Colin Powell to review final preparations for the Desert Storm ground campaign. It was 10 years ago tonight that Radio Baghdad first suggested Iraq might be willing to withdraw from Kuwait. 10 days later, they did. For his leadership, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Mr. Vice President, on this 10th anniversary, would you please allow all of us here tonight to thank you for the brilliance, the bravery, and the brevity of Desert Storm, and welcome to CPAC, Mr. Vice President.
At the 2005 CPAC, Wayne LaPierre again was master of ceremonies for Dick Cheney. Here's how the speech ended.
All of us know there's much yet to do, and you can be certain that President Bush and I are eager for the work ahead. On his behalf, I want to thank our many friends gathered here tonight. We're deeply grateful for your support and for the high honor of serving the American people for 4 more years. Thank you very much.
What a great beginning for our CPAC banquet tonight. How about it again? For Vice President Cheney.
At the 2006 CPAC, Dick Cheney was introduced by the chairman of the American Conservative Union, David Keene.
It falls upon me this evening to once again introduce the friend who, not to be too trite about it, needs no introduction. Vice President Dick Cheney has appeared here before. In fact, with the sole exception of former President Ronald Reagan, he's the highest-ranking official with a continuing relationship with CPAC, and indeed with the movement of which we are all a part. One of the reasons, in fact, that we gather here each year is to hear and applaud him, knowing as conservatives that there are 2 places you can find Dick Cheney. One is at the podium of CPAC, and the other is in the nightmares of Osama bin Laden and other enemies of the United States. We welcomed him here as a congressman, as Secretary of Defense, and as Vice President of the United States, but always, always as a valued friend. It is my honor to turn this microphone over to Dick Cheney, the Vice President of the United States.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
At the 2008 CPAC, Dick Cheney was introduced by another elected official from Wyoming, Republican Senator John Barrasso.
The last time I was here as part of a panel on the culture wars, and at that time I was a Wyoming state senator. And when we think about Wyoming history, I will tell you that when CPAC was in its infancy, a young man from Casper, Wyoming, set out and began his quest to get elected to Congress. So few people knew him that he actually had a button made that said, "I'm Dick Cheney." When he was campaigning one day in DuBois, Wyoming, he was sitting there in a coffee shop and a rancher was there. He went up, introduced himself. He said, "I'm Dick Cheney, running for Congress." The Wyoming rancher said, "Are you a Democrat?" He said, "No, sir." Looked at him again, said, "Are you a lawyer?" He said, "No, sir." The rancher said, "Good, then I'll vote for you." Well, I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a lawyer. I'm a conservative Republican. For the last 25 years, I've been an orthopedic surgeon practicing in Casper, Wyoming, and there I had the great privilege to know Dick's mom, Marge. She was a volunteer, and she was always volunteering her time right outside the operating room, visiting with the people whose families were having surgery. And one day I said, "Marge, why is it that you're always here? You're not delivering the flowers, you're not down in the other areas, you're always here." She said, "Oh, Dr. Barrasso, everybody in Wyoming comes through here. It's a great place to campaign for Dick." I've had the privilege of being one of his hometown constituents, one of his volunteers on his campaigns, and it was a true privilege to be sworn into the United States Senate by our Vice President and this morning's Speaker. Today is his last time at CPAC as our Vice President. And today, to me, the C in CPAC should stand for Cheney. That's because he is committed, he is consistent, and he is conservative. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Vice President of the United States, Dick Cheney.
Now Dick Cheney at the February 18, 2010 CPAC. This time he's introduced by a family member, future Wyoming Congresswoman, and his daughter, Liz Cheney.
There is one man in particular we all know who certainly has taught me what it means to have the courage of your convictions. You know who I'm talking about. For my whole life, he has taught me to stand up for what I believe in and to fight for what's right. And often before big speeches like this one, I ask his opinion, I seek his advice. Well, today, instead, I brought him with me.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Knock it off. A welcome like that's almost enough to want to make me run for office again. But I'm not going to do it.
The most recent Dick Cheney appearance on CPAC, as seen and heard on C-SPAN, was the next year, 2011, and it was a surprise. He paid tribute to his friend, former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. He received the group's Defender of the Constitution Award. Here again is David Keene, and this time, protesters.
Usually when we present this award, we're able to do it but I think that in just listening to what Brad talked about in terms of the parallels between Don Rumsfeld's career and James Monroe's career, we thought we needed some help. So we thought we'd bring somebody else up to present the award who is more familiar with much of what this man has accomplished over the years than we could ever be. And so we brought an additional presenter, the former Vice President of the United States, Dick Cheney.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Mercy. All right, sit down and shut up.
And now, a bonus clip. The earliest introduction of Dick Cheney at CPAC in the C-SPAN archives, March 2nd, 1990, when he was Secretary of Defense for President George H.W. Bush. Here is legendary conservative publicist and spokesman for Barry Goldwater during the 1964 presidential campaign, Vic Gold.
So we have a great family man, a great Secretary of Defense, and a great friend of all of us, Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney.
We end with a quick note about this podcast. We're getting a refresh. We're changing names. This episode is the last one called The Weekly. We'll still have a brand new podcast every week. We just won't call it that anymore. With next week's episode, the new name will be Extreme Mortman, and a new tagline, Political History for Political Junkies. New podcast name, new podcast slogan, but Extreme Mortman continues the same podcast purpose. Original political stories inspired by current political events. Yes, we'll still be Political History for Political Junkies. And if you've already subscribed, you don't need to do a thing. Your feed will be automatically updated. We hope you continue listening, and we hope you'll continue searching.